Hello.
Hello. Your computer is really low.
Hold on. Can you hear me now? You know what? I don't have to talk, so it's fine.
Okay. I guess that works too.
And I know I asked you this all like already, but just the bios and the survey.
Bios survey. And then Aliana is going to post. Hold on, let me find my script. Aliana's going to post the newsletter link.
Okay.
And yeah,
All right.
woohoo. Feeling good.
That's good. And you have a good amount of people too. Oh,
Yes. Oh, that's one of the speakers. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and let her in. Oh, can you make Aliana a co-host when she comes in, please?
yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Hi, Dr. Gough. How are you today?
Hi, I'm doing well. My just so you know, my last name is spelled is pronounced like Goff, Gough.
Gough. I'm sorry. My
It
apologies.
is an impossible name, so no worries. It's nice to meet you.
Likewise, likewise. Thank you for being here with us. We appreciate your time. I'm very excited for the presentation.
Yeah, me too. I was gonna send a note to my co-presenters to make sure they're gonna join.
Dr. Means is joining now.
He is okay.
And then do you all have slides?
I do.
Okay.
Um, I was thinking I would just advance them, but if you wanna,
Loria, what do you think works best?
If you want to share your screen, you should have ability to do that.
okay.
So we'll do a brief introduction of DCE and you all, and then we'll put your bios in the chat for everyone to see, and then you all can go ahead and get started.
Okay, let me try to share and see how this
Oh,
goes.
yeah.
Okay, give me. I have a couple of things open, so how's that look?
Looks good.
And so that would be the full screen. That look all right?
Yes, that looks really good.
Okay, awesome. Hi, Bernard.
Hi, how are you doing? It looks like I think my animations aren't going to work.
Uh-oh. On the presentation?
Yeah, because they're probably linked to my Google Drive. It might work if you, because you're gonna have to share with me too, I think,
Um, yeah.
unless you want to run the slides.
Do you want to run the slides, Bernard, then?
Well, we both can if it's shared with both of us.
We can. I don't know how that works.
Oh, maybe not.
I think
We'll just have you run it.
I think you both can. L'Oreal, can you explain how they both can do it? I don't remember what you told me last time.
Yeah, so there's a way that you can give someone what is it, slide access?
I
If you
have access to the slides.
no, so like when
Oh, oh yeah.
like if Dr. Gough is sharing her presentation, she can give you access to change the slides while like on the computer. So do you see something on the bottom that says like slide controls?
Yes.
So
Oh.
you can give him access to change the slides on your
All
computer.
right, Bernard, you have access. Let me see if I can do the slideshow here. And why don't you try to advance them?
Now it says I have to. I'm sending a request.
Oh, okay.
Okay. It should work now.
That's not me.
That was me. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, so it looks like I have control now.
Is that you? Why don't you try to get to your slides and,
Well, I'm gonna,
see?
I have a view to request access. I'm gonna try to click on that.
You don't have permission to play.
It's not letting me do it. Oh,
Oh, wait.
yeah, go ahead and click on both, and then I think it'll pop up in my email. So I'm gonna go to my email real quick.
This is new.
It's because of the way Google Slides does animations, they had to be in Google Drive. I'm not getting, well, Google Drive's not giving me a request option. They're not critical animations.
Okay.
So
Or did you guys want to do it in reverse, where Dr. Means would share his slide and then give Dr. Gough?
it's all a presentation. So
Oh,
yeah, I'm fine with if they don't work, I'll just skip over the slide.
Okay. All right. We'll make it work.
I'm waiting to see if Miss Tillman can join us here first before I let everyone else in.
Yeah, I just sent her a note.
You said it's Gough, right?
Gough, like Goff.
Gough.
Or cough.
Yeah, that's the only equivalent. But any other variation of the OUGH leads you
Like
down
an
another
07,
path.
right? Yeah. Interesting. I've actually had my last name mispronounced.
Is it not Means?
It is.
Okay.
Somebody
I mean, I'm
pronounced it as Means.
Oh,
Yeah.
gotcha.
It's such an uncommon word.
also, Shalyn, I can't give Aliana co-host access. Could
Okay.
you?
Well, I can do that, I think.
Thank you. And I can keep an eye out on the waiting room.
Okay. So I don't see Miss Selman yet.
I really hope she can make it. Bernard, she wasn't at our meeting this week. So I wonder if she's not feeling well. I hadn't heard from her.
I haven't heard anything from her, so
Up to you all. Would you like to, excuse me, proceed, or do we want to wait a couple more minutes?
I'm ready to start.
Yeah, I think we can proceed. So Loretta, she had wanted to not actually present slides, but have we have it set up so we're gonna have a lot of time for like the discussion and Q&A. And we have some things that we want to talk about. And that's where Loretta wanted to participate. So she still has time.
Okay, good. I will go ahead and admit everyone. Thank you. Hi, everyone. As everyone begins joining, we'll start in just a moment, but I want to give everyone a chance to get connected. Okay, it looks like we're good to go. Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us for this session here today of our Community Engaged Research Series in the Division of Community Engagement. These sessions are designed to enhance skills in community engagement and focus on building stronger, more inclusive partnerships. Whether you're new to community engaged research, or you are a seasoned veteran. We hope that these sessions do spark new ideas and opportunities for growth. I have a quick slide deck before we get into our speakers, and then we'll proceed. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Division of Community Engagement here in the Provost Office at VCU with a guiding framework of partnership, alignment, and impact. And our motto is engaging the community in all that we do. More information about our team and what we do is available on our website, and one of our lovely team members will likely drop that in the chat. Thank you so much. And we want to go over a couple of housekeeping rules before we get started. Please keep your microphones on mute so that we give all the time and respect to our presenters. And please feel free to drop your questions in the chat, whether that be during the presentation or thereafter. And a team member, a DCE team member will answer the questions aloud, or not answer, excuse me, read the questions aloud at the end so that our speakers can address them. So today I wanted to introduce our speakers to you. We have three dynamic speakers who truly embody the mission and vision of community engagement. It is a privilege to have Drs. Meghan Gough and Dr. Bernard Means and Ms. Loretta Tillman, who I think is joining us in just a moment. They will be speaking on cultivating long-term partnerships between the institution and the community. Their bios will be placed in the chat subsequently for you all to read. Please help me welcome Drs. Gough, Means, and Ms. Tillman, and we'll go ahead and let them get started. So I'm going to stop sharing screens here so that you all can begin.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. My name is Meghan Gough. I'm going to start us off, and then Bernard and Loretta will be joining in the conversation as we get a little bit through the slides. But I'll go ahead and try to share with you here. There we are. So again, my name is Meghan Gough. I am a faculty member in urban planning in the VCU's L. Douglas Wilder School for Government and Public Affairs. And I am joined here with Bernard Means and Loretta Tillman. And we are going to talk on behalf of the Richmond Cemetery Collaboratory, specifically trying to look at and reflect on, frankly, how we've gone about cultivating this long-term partnership between VCU, University of Richmond, and a host of community organizations that are serve as our guide and really centerpiece to the work of thinking about Richmond's historic cemeteries. So our goal for today is to get through some of these slides so we can really have conversations on the back end of the slides. But with this presentation, I really want to give an overview of what the Richmond Cemetery Collaboratory is, for those that don't know, describe how the Collaboratory's unique design and approach to community university partnerships is done in a way that integrates the benefits cross-university, cross-disciplinary, to collectively care for a critical need in our community. And then, as I said, we'll spend a lot of time at the end to answer questions and reflect on more of the how, and even some of the ways that we've adapted over time, and even had to think about new approaches given things that are happening in our environment. So I wanted to first set the context for Richmond's historic cemeteries. So in the late 1800s, a number of cemeteries were founded in Richmond by African Americans who sought to create places where premier burial grounds could be established for Black residents, especially during the height of Jim Crow segregation, which barred Black residents from interring their loved ones in white cemeteries. What we see here is an aerial photograph in the middle from 1936 of East End Cemetery, which was established in 1897. It's 16 acres of land that straddles the border between Henrico County and the city of Richmond. And it's estimated that more than 15,000 African Americans were laid to rest in this cemetery. It was once an immaculate cemetery, formally laid out, burial grounds with established pathways, and it's an adjacent cemetery called Evergreen were places where some of Richmond's most notable residents were interred, including doctors, bankers, educators, funeral directors. And you can see on the right side of the screen, this is what an aerial photograph of Easton Cemetery looked like in 2023. And part of the context here to understand is that for a number of reasons, no arrangements for perpetual care were made for many cemeteries, including East End. So when the community and the families that supported the cemetery and cared for the cemetery started to disperse as part of the Great Migration and really under the weight of forces that were attacking African American civil rights and economic power provision in the wake of Reconstruction, the many hands that were caring for the cemetery were more limited and dispersed. So a lot, what you see here in the aerial photograph was the reclaiming by trees and vines, ivy. So in place, this was taken in 2013 of East End Cemetery. In place of these formally laid out burial grounds was 16 acres of forest that was hard to traverse. And I'll show you a photo a little bit later in the presentation, but we are actually looking at burial plots in this photo, but we can't see them. So this overgrowth had blanketed thousands and thousands of graves, where we were only able to see graves that were some of the tallest headstones, maybe kind of sticking out of this overgrowth. So in 2013, there was a man named John Shuck who had started to organize a group of volunteers to work in the cemetery and try to reclaim these plots. And I should say that during the time, even before 2013, there were many families and loved ones who were continued to go to East End to work on specific family plots, carving out particular areas, but as you can see here, the overgrowth was just so substantial that it was really hard to maintain. So the beginnings of the Collaboratory, we could talk about that for a long time, but I'm just going to give some of the highlights. In 2015, I believe, Elizabeth Bond, a professor from University of Richmond in classics and archaeology, who you see in the left photo in the white shirt, she joined. She was at a University of Richmond downtown event where there was a special exhibit being put on called "All Our Sorrows Heal" by Brian Palmer and Aaron Palmer, who you see in the photo, that had curated this exhibit and created these photographs from East End Cemetery. And so Lizzie Bond and her colleague from University of Richmond were able to organized to go out to the cemetery. And Christine Grayson, I should say, is the professor on the left. Organized, let's go out to Evergreen Cemetery and take our students and start to work on reclaiming this area. So soon, at this point, other University of Richmond professors got involved. That extended over to VCU, where Dr. Ryan Smith, a professor in history, got involved. Susan Bodner-Darren, a professor of sociology, was involved, and other faculty, including Wyoni Edwards Ingram, who I think is on this call, and Mike Rackett from Transform, were early faculty involved in this collaboratory, and it has since extended. The Friends of East End, an all-volunteer nonprofit, was established in 2017, around the same time as the Collaboratory. And it grew out of the cleanup effort that I had mentioned that had started in 2013. And the Friends have been leading this effort with thousands of other volunteers over the years to clear this vegetation, remove trash that had been dumped in the cemeteries, and started to reclaim some of these hidden graves. So in partnership with descendants and the broader community, the Friends have led the transformation of East End and neighboring Evergreen Cemetery now into the sites that they should be, of memory and honor for Richmond's African American past and present. So the Collaboratory was established around the same time in collaboration with faculty, staff, students, Friends of East End, and it was established as you can see in this photo, the East End Cemetery Collaboratory in 2017. And the mission, while the mission has maintained to support African American history and culture via the region's cemeteries, we have since expanded to include East End Cemetery, but many of the other historic Black cemeteries in the city of Richmond. Our partners over the time have included the Friends of East End, Oakwood Arts, the Descendants Council of Greater Richmond, Virginia, of which Loretta Tillman, who will be joining us, is co-chair of the Descendants Council, Woodland Restoration Foundation, Library of Virginia, and a host of other organizations have been a key part of the community partners of this group. So this was the photo I showed earlier from 2013. The work of these groups over time has changed the same spot in 2018 in East End Evergreen to a place that reveals these burial grounds and individual headstones that had been covered by nature over time. Here's another photo of the road coming into East End Cemetery, which at one point looked like this, and really beneath all of that vegetation were these grave sites that had been and have been maintained since. And again, primarily by the volunteerism of these different groups, including the Collaboratory. So just a quick overview of the Collaboratory, as we called it, by the numbers. If we're thinking about the Collaboratory as an example of a community university partnership, multiple university partnerships, it's interesting to look at the variety of groups and products that are part of the Collaboratory. So we have over 24 faculty and staff, many different disciplines, 8 community partner organizations that we've worked with, over 40 courses, that faculty between University of Richmond and VCU have integrated with the work of the cemeteries. And Bernard will talk about some of the products in a little bit that have been developed: interactive maps, archives, 3D scans, as well as a number of research products, and certainly many cemetery cleanup days. One of the things I want to point out that we can talk about a little bit later is the critical importance of a program and organization like the Collaboratory when it comes to the program management and the funding support. It couldn't happen without both. So from the very start, University of Richmond's Bonner Center for Civic Engagement has been an active funder of this work, making it possible for faculty and community partners to receive stipends that would enable this extra work on top of work that they're already doing to participate in the Collaboratory. And then the programmatic support. We have two fantastic folks out of the Bonner Center, Derek Miller, Terry Dolson, who have done a lot of this background work of making sure all the parts fit together, the funding is there. Starting in 2019, I believe, the VCU Provost Office and now the Division of Community Engagement, Sherry Garmice, who's I think joining us, and Magbuba Mosaville have generously supported financially the work of the Collaboratory, which allows us funding again for stipends, but also to do community events, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Just a quick overview of the courses. We have a number of courses that are run through the Collaboratory, and it is amazing the work and the impact that this has on students in terms of learning material in new and different ways. This is a list. I'm not going to go through it, but you can see the variety of courses that can interface with the places that we are working in and supporting. In urban planning, I have taught a number of courses that have been done in conjunction with community partners in the Collaboratory. And this goes all the way to VCU Arts, for example. And so students are first made aware that these cemeteries exist, because that is just the public education around these historic cemeteries is critical. But they also play a role, as you can see in this photo, of helping to reclaim and identify headstones, gravestones that have been covered over time, and being able to connect that then to new entries in the archive is important. Kiara Lee in Focused Inquiry was able to work with students in the cemeteries. And here's just a snapshot of some of the work that her class did, is creating these zines around advocacy and education around East End and Evergreen cemeteries. I was in 2023, my class created story maps around the cemeteries of Barton Heights and Woodland Cemetery. And I can talk more about this when we are in discussion, but the thing that was most helpful with this course is that there were really close collaborations between my students and community partners. I specifically worked with members of the Descendants Council in this course, as well as the Woodland Restoration Foundation that was in regular communication, educating my students about individuals interred in these cemeteries and the larger story and context of the cemeteries. And here's an example of our class meeting, and Loretta's in the foreground in in the coral colored pants, along with Eric right next to her, members of the Descendants Council who are talking with my students about the cemeteries and their work and advocacy in trying to protect and restore the cemeteries of Barton Heights. And then this is just an example of other ways that we are kind of working and creating a broader community in doing community conversations. So classes are not operating in a vacuum. Midway through the courses, we frequently hold these community conversations so students can present their work in progress, get feedback from community, and from descendants who are able to steer students and advise students prior to the end of the work. So you can see Bernard in one of the photos and Loretta as well, working with students. So I'm going to pass it over to Bernard to talk a little bit more about some of the research tools and products of the Collaboratory.
Awesome. Thank you, Megan. So one of the things that we try to do with these research tools is to not only physically reclaim the cemeteries, which has been a lot of the work, but also to help uncover people's identities and make sure that we can share these to broader audiences. And in part, we recognize that a lot of the families who have their dead buried here and laid to rest may no longer be in the area. And so these tools are designed in part to give them access anywhere in the world, basically. Part of that is archival. So people have gone when graves are identified, or at least partly identified. A lot of archival research is done. People go through newspapers, go through obituaries, any kind of records they can find to reclaim the identities of the people that are buried there. And so that's what the cemetery collaboratory archives is about. And as you can imagine, a lot of these archival records are, sorry, it's not a computer I usually use. A lot of these archival records are challenging. They're incomplete information. And one of the things that people who, as they work through these archival records, recognize is that even in the death notices, there's systemic racism where prominent African Americans are not mentioned in sort of the quote unquote main Richmond newspapers in the same level of detail that other individuals would be. So it's a learning experience for people in that respect as well. So there's the archival part, uncovering the identity as best as possible for individuals. And then we have some more sophisticated tools that are used. And a lot of this is actually done through the University of Richmond's Spatial Analysis Center. They've been using, once the cemeteries are cleared enough, they've been using drones to map the cemeteries. And then as graves are identified, they're located on these maps. And then the points themselves can tie in to whatever digital data is available. So it ties into the archival records, but it can also tie into if we have like 3D scans or other web sources like Find a Grave. So this is a good sort of visual resource. And if people have an idea where their loved ones may have been buried, the maps really help with that. And then very recently, and we don't have a slide on this, but people have been developing walking tours that tie into the digital maps as well. And so that's something I think we're going to see more coming out as we sort of move forward. Here's just another example of showing how you can sort of navigate some of these sites. And as Megan said, there are story maps. There are all kinds of visual resources that are constantly being added to these sort of digital records. There are a couple of documentaries that have been done. And these are all on the Cemetery Collaboratory site as well. There are links to these as well. But we want to make sure that this is not like a VCU or University of Richmond imposed project. The community has to be very heavily involved. And that's why we get into sort of community dinners as well, to make sure that the community is guiding the work that's being done, and we're here to help them navigate their way through aspects of sort of the tools that um, they may not be as familiar with. My primary focus as part of the Collaboratory is 3D digital documentation of the grave markers. So once graves have been identified, we've been going out and using tools that are readily accessible. So if you have the right kind of phone or tablet, you can actually help contribute to the documentation. And I have a number of students who are interns or federal work study who've been helping a lot with this particular project. Brooklyn Griffin, who you see here, was hoping to actually sort of chime in at this part, but she has bacterial pneumonia. So speaking is not something that she's ready to do today. But she's documented by herself well over, I think, 150 grave markers at Woodland Cemetery. And so these grave marker identifications are important, again, for allowing people to see the grave of their loved ones, even if they're not local. They're also been really critical for documenting sort of the negative impacts that some of this systemic racism has shown, partly in vandalism and partly in neglect, even with maintaining the cemeteries. And in fact, we've been to Barton Heights a couple of times, and grave markers have been damaged through like mowing and other kind of maintenance from previous times that we've been there. This is actually a static photo, but this particular image was one that I shared with Loretta, and she actually shared it with the city. This is just a hillside where people have dumped grave markers that have been gathered from throughout Barton Heights. So nothing's in context. So there's actually no respect shown for the people that are interred here. And Loretta thought this was a particularly sort of a powerful image that she could share with members of the city of Richmond to try to get them to really actually pay attention to the issues with maintaining and revealing the graves and the condition of the graves. We are working on developing these tools so that anybody can contribute who has the resources. So Brooklyn actually did a little brochure that we need to get up onto the Collaboratory website. We did this for the Impact Conference that was held at VCU a couple of weeks ago. So I think it's been a couple of weeks. And more recently, University of Richmond and VCU have gone out to St. James Cemetery. So a number of smaller cemeteries in the Richmond area have approached the Collaboratory about sort of becoming part of the effort. So we went out to St. James and helped uncover grave markers and 3D document the grave markers. And we had a very lovely community presentation, mostly by students at the Verina Library, where we were able to sort of showcase some of the things that we had sort of uncovered. So yeah, I knew this was going to happen. So I'm going to skip this slide. So if it lets me. So one of the things that we can do once we have sort of the 3D models, we can do things like 3D printing. And when we did the Verina community event, I actually was able to speak with one of the descendants of the person represented by this grave marker here. And I was actually able to hand her a copy of the grave marker. And she really liked that, had sort of tangible connection. And she had been out to the cemetery, and so she'd seen the grave marker. But this is a way that she could sort of bring the memory of her ancestor into her own home. Do you want me to do this part, Megan?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So we've had a number of community events. We want to make sure that the community is aware of what we're doing as part of the Collaboratory, and we also want to make sure that the community recognizes that if they're not currently a member of the Collaboratory, that we're very open to people coming in. We're open to people helping with restoration efforts. We want to make sure that this is very much a community-driven event. And we want to get people's ideas of where we need to go, what needs to be done. And that's actually one of the reasons why the Collaboratory has expanded beyond the sort of the core cemeteries that had worked with, is that members of the community have come out and said, we have a cemetery that needs attention, or that we want to make sure people are aware of some of the issues that we're encountering. So the community dinners have been really popular. This allows people to come and learn about any of sort of the active work that we're doing with the Collaboratory, to sort of give their own voice, talk about how what kind of meaning they found as being part of the Collaboratory. I always bring 3D prints with me to share with individuals. There's definitely, even though we're focusing on digital techniques, people do sort of like a sort of a tangible connection to the past. And this is from the community dinner that we did very, very recently. So Brooklyn Griffin, who's been doing so much work on documenting cemeteries, our graves markers at Woodland Cemetery, was able to actually meet John Shuck, I think, for the first time, and sort of having meaningful conversation with him. So it's meaningful for members of the community, but it's also very meaningful for the people who are working as part of the effort. And I know like Brooklyn herself has sort of expressed how meaningful she finds doing this work, particularly in today's political climate, which has been so such an antithesis to the kind of the work we're trying to do as part of the Collaboratory. And then we have a conference coming up next weekend, so a week from Saturday, at the University of Richmond, and this is the Richmond Cemetery Collaboratory's first conference, and the idea is to provide people with information about the kind of tools that they can use to help with this effort with what the effort we're doing, or maybe if they're not from the area, tools they can take back home with them. And so you do need to register for the event. There are going to be a couple of tours in the morning at 2 different cemeteries, East End and Woodland, and then there are presentations in the afternoon. So, and I think oh yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's it. I'll stop sharing, but I just want to point everybody to the Cemetery Collaboratory website there, where you can find a lot of this information and more. So I'll stop sharing.
Well, thank you, Doctors Gough and Mead, for such a robust conversation about sustaining long-term partnerships. We now have time for questions. So since we have a lot of you here, we will ask that you do questions in 2 forms. Either use the reaction feature and raise your hand, and someone from the DCE team will help us facilitate questions, or you can place them in the chat and we can read those aloud. And while you all are gathering and collecting your thoughts, I actually have a question. Can you talk about how you establish goals with some of the community partners for what you wanted the Cemetery Collaboratory to look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's something that we do annually. And so what we typically do, and we will be doing this next month at our May meeting, is taking stock of what the priorities were for the last year, and then really look to our community partners to ask, what should the priorities be for this next academic year? That helps us frame and also recruit faculty members who are interested or can contribute to those particular areas. And so it's, sometimes it changes a lot, sometimes not as much. As an example, this last year, and likely going forward to next year, there were a lot of changes that happen with cemetery ownership in Richmond, specifically East End and Evergreen and Forest View cemeteries. The city of Richmond decided that it would, take ownership and oversee that space, but in very close collaboration and partnership with the descendants. So that's something on our radar as we think about how could we support that, what needs to happen, how do we start thinking about what that power sharing looks like, and the volunteerism around that. And so in those moments, the faculty that are involved in the collaboratory are our listeners to figure out, okay, how do we start to create and shape that? Does that sound right, Bernard?
Yes, definitely. I literally could not have said it better.
Awesome. Thank you. What are some of the challenges you faced in maintaining the partnerships, and what have you learned from that?
Well,
Oh,
actually, I'm wondering if has Loretta joined us yet?
Let me take a
I'm
look at our
here.
list.
Yeah,
Yep, there
Loretta's
she is.
here. Thank you. Loretta, before we were planning this, we were talking about and I see there's a couple questions in the chat about the enrichment situation. And so would you like to talk about that and sort of the challenge that it posed to the work of everyone?
Well, I hope everybody, if you don't know what Enrichment was, it was a part of the city originally, the park and rec system. And then it got spun off, in particular after it took over several cemeteries that the city might have had to have taken over themselves directly. It became a nonprofit and moved on, but it wasn't doing what it needed to be doing. And so eventually they went bust a few years back, and then the city had to step in because they had sort of guaranteed that if anything happened, they would step in. And then it took a couple of years for them to actually get through all the legal hurdles. So last year, if I'm not mistaken, they finally were able to take it on. And in the interim, the cemeteries were not doing as well because they did not have regular care. And from some other things that had happened within Richmond and the community. And finally, now they do. But because of that neglect and several other things, and just the general state of the cemeteries, the city has then had to partner with the community a bit more, in particular, the Friends of East End. And we finally now have a dedicated person to deal with the closed cemeteries. These are all considered to be closed as there are no new burials, even though I believe in Woodland, there's still some plots that are not being utilized. They were bought, but have not been utilized yet. But other than that, the rest of them are closed. And that's part of the problem, is that the city has what's called enterprise funding. And that means that they have to dig graves, sell and dig graves in order to maintain the cemetery process for everyone, open and closed. So that's part of the problem. But we are moving forward with them, and we are grateful to have some of the work from the Collaboratory to support what is going on. We had a meeting last night with a city member, city employee who is tasked with dealing with the cemeteries. And Barton is starting finally to rise up into some prominence because of its situation. It's a bit different than the others, as you saw from the maps, but the map does not do a good job, unfortunately, of showing you that there is a big valley that has opened up over many years in that cemetery, and that's going to have to be dealt with. So we're working with the city, and we're working with DHR, and we are working with Collaboratory, and slowly but surely a lot of fruit is coming onto those trees and being ready to be plucked as far as helping these situations.
Thanks, Loretta. And within all of that context, the Collaboratory, as I mentioned at the beginning, it was the East End Cemetery Collaboratory. And then all of a sudden, we were not able to physically be in that cemetery for that time. So that was a challenge. And that was around the time that I joined the Collaboratory, and there was, there had to be a big discussion about, so what do we do? And that was really kind of a point where we started to branch out to attend and partner with um, groups that are working in other cemeteries as well. It was certainly a hard time, and I'd say, we think about community engaged partnerships. Trust is at the core of all of that, and I think that was a moment for many people in trying to think about, so what does this mean, and what does this mean for not only access and care, but just questions of descendants of discursive ownership, right? If people are not in a position to be able to visit their family members, for example. That was a challenging time, and I think the reverberations of it continue. But as Loretta said, there seems to be promise that, and Janet, I see your question about Parks and Rec, of working with the Parks and Rec employees and staff on a cultural landscapes report that will, advise in terms of how the 3 cemeteries that the city now owns after the Enrichment Foundation debacle. And what does that mean for a different way of decision making that is done in partnership and in really close power sharing partnership with descendants?
Thank you. Speaking of descendants, we have one that says, as the descendants are very involved, have there been or has there been any planning for descendant gatherings near any of the sites?
Loretta?
So, yeah. So Denise Barton is a good example of this. Many years ago, Denise Lester got the cemetery cleaned up. I mean, we're talking decades ago. And they used to have what was called Whit Monday, and they would go out there. And then we were planning for another Whit Monday because they had stopped. The Senate Council was planning for one several years back, and then COVID hit, and that had to go. Um, Looking at these places, how to put this, they're not clean in the way that would necessarily be welcoming of a something on the actual site. In some cases, the sites are quite dangerous because there's been sinkage of the graves. You can't even see necessarily where they all are, and somebody could step in one next to you and have a broke ankle. There are wild animals occasionally. There's a whole bit over at I don't know how much you know about the others. One has been completely closed off because of where it is under 64. You've got these kind of problems. And when you talk about cemeteries, we're on the second end of that. And it would be nice to have such a thing. And then you have the other problem. So you have problems with people not knowing that they have people in them. The one in the bottom and the 2 Shako cemeteries, the Shako African and the Shako Bottom African. Most people won't know that they had anybody in them because those things have been so obliterated and so messed over. We don't really know who's in there except for a couple of instances, and we don't know where those people are, to be honest. As for the others, Barton is slowly, thank you again, Dr. Bernard. Barton, every time I go out there, something has fallen over, something has wandered away. You know, that's part of that problem. And then, of course, the forested, the two others who have still heavily forested. So that's the big problem. Woodland's the only one, quite frankly, where you can, for the most part, find people in a sort of orderly fashion, if you will. So if anybody has any or wants to work on it, I'm willing to work on it, to actually bring, have such a thing. But right now it's messy because of those things and some more stuff.
And Woodland's a really good model of the effort that can be done to reclaim a cemetery. There's a lot of people that come out and help at Woodland to do the documentation and to clean the cemetery and stuff. But there's still a lot to do as well.
All
So
that. Even with all that.
One of the things I think is important, if we're thinking about the collaboratory as a model for community engagement, is regular touch points, right? So the collaboratory, the members of the collaboratory meet monthly. And those are, check-in points, maybe planning points. But the most impactful most impactful touch points, I should say, are the times where it's the collaboratory hosting events that the broader community and descendants can attend and join in. So Bernard showed the photos of the community dinner. This is one of the events that VCU funding has supported, and it is one of the most important things I think that we do, because it is a time where people and groups that are working in different cemeteries, descendants who actually drive a pretty far distance to come and join and just connect with people. That's where that happens. So we have a dinner and a broader community sharing questions, concerns, celebrations of the work that has been done or needs to be done. So I would say those are really important moments of where we can not just bring community together, but grow community. And I think that's a critical part of the structure that we have.
Thank you. We have another question that talks about what implications on policy, which you all touched on with the enrichment, but are there implications for best practices in community engaged research?
Sure. And Bernard and Loretta, feel free to jump in. I think this is, I'll speak from my standpoint, is that over the last several years that I've been part of the collaboratory and seen the evolution, not just of the work, because the work happens in tangent with kind of the broader community and broader policies that are happening. I see a positive outlook. I think that the more that people know that these cemeteries first exist, and then to know a little bit more about the humanity of it. Who are these people? Who what about the lives that they've lived? And then just to have a moment of critique around how these cemeteries have been treated over time and this isn't all on a city government, although that's part of it, but it is general public, right? There is responsibility broader than the city about how these places have been treated. So I see change. I can tell from my students, after seeing or being introduced to these cemeteries, it changes a lot in the ways that they're thinking about public policy and planning for sure, and changes and discussions that need to be had. Um, I think it's a positive movement that the city of Richmond is collaborating so closely with the Friends of East End and other descendants around a model for how Richmond will be thinking about planning for restoring and protecting its historic Black cemeteries, even beyond the three that they own, the three that they recently took ownership over, and what that means for funding, right? Where do we want to where do we want that those efforts and those monies to attend to? So I'll just pause and see if Bernard or Loretta have other things to add.
Well, the only thing I would add is just I'm really happy with how dynamic the Collaboratory has been in getting the community to actually they're not a passive participant. They're an active contributor to what we do, and we focus on making sure that we have tools that are generally available that they themselves can use. You don't need really expensive or elaborate equipment or computers to make a contribution. And part of what we're trying to do is get more of a word out about how you can yourself contribute to this project.
The only thing else I add is both Dr. Bernard and Dr. Meghan are correct in what they're saying, and I love it. There has been movement forward. But unfortunately, also with that, as we're seeing with some of the issues that are rising up, in particular with the cemeteries down in Shaka, or up in Shaka too. The city has avoided for many years dealing with the fact that they have a lot of cemetery, some of it quite unknown right now. And they have allowed all sorts of things to happen to it. I remember when all of this was considered, and I quote, to be open and available land and for development. And as we're talking now, there are plans to potentially go into one of the cemeteries while building a museum. And so we've got these two impulses. One, we need to do the right thing around these cemeteries, and yet they're sitting on prime land that if those people weren't in there, would be selling for millions and millions of dollars because they're next to MCV or VCU or downtown or the financial district or somewhere that would make excellent housing or other uses or to other uses, but unfortunately cannot be. So what do we do? And so the one thing I would hope eventually, and I'm working towards for sure, is for the city to understand what really is going on with these cemeteries, and that they have to have a consistent policy about this and be done with it, rather than well and but for. Thank you.
You. And thank you again, Doctors Gough, Means, and Ms. Tillman, for providing us with your expertise. And as we continue to enhance and grow community engagement here at VCU and build towards thriving communities, you all's work really embodies that, and you can continue to contribute to that landscape. Also, I want to invite you all to stay up to date with current events that are occurring in the Division of Community Engagement. You can check out our newsletter, which will be in the chat, and please consider subscribing to that newsletter. Lastly, before anyone leaves, we would love for you to complete a brief survey for us. We have a few moments, so we'll keep the room open so you all have the space to complete it. It really helps us know what kinds of topics you all are looking for so that we can plan for future events as well as how we can improve upon future sessions. I do want to thank you all for your time again, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event.
Thank you so much. And I will say, if anybody's interested in being closer connected to the Collaboratory, please reach out, and also maybe check out our symposium that will be held at the Library of Virginia next Saturday. Thank you.
We will send a follow-up email with those links for everyone.
Okay.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks again for hosting us.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving us all of your time as well as your information and your energy. This was really great. Super informative. I feel like I want to go visit the cemeteries now, so I'm very excited to have learned this information and continue to explore more.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, if you do want to visit the cemeteries, the symposium that will be held on the 29th, the beginnings part of that is in the morning. We do have buses that are going to take folks to East End and Evergreen, and then to Woodland to do a walk and talk with some of the Friends of East End and the Woodland Restoration Foundation at both those spaces. So that could be an opportunity.
Yes, thank you. Do you all do tours frequently or like walking tours?
So there's a couple of things. I think mostly we definitely, the Collaboratory, I would say, me as a faculty member would be reaching out to our community partners or the friends group that are really leading some of the work there, to do a walk and talk led by those individuals. We are, Bernard mentioned it briefly, creating walking tours through like story maps and GIS, that could be available, and it's still a work in progress, but could be available for others to be able to do that on their own. Like, for example, the one of the story maps that my class created for Woodland was that the story map was like, here are some points, not that, all the grave sites are important, but to really take people around some of the grave sites that are frequently of interest by people. So there are a couple tools that are happening, and I think the organizations connected with each of these cemeteries are working on doing similar work in that regard, just to have more accessibility and public education.
Thank you. And thank you for your time again. I'm going to go ahead and close this out since
Okay.
I'm sure everyone is ready to go get their lunch if they haven't already.
Yep.
So
I have a quick
thank you,
question.
everyone.
I
Oh,
have a
go
quick
ahead. I'm
question.
sorry.
So going back to what you all were saying about doing the walk through the cemetery, are they wheelchair accessible?
Are the walkways accessible? Is that the question?
Yeah. Are they wheelchair accessible?
Wheelchair. My opinion is that there are very limited parts that are wheelchair accessible. At this point, I don't know. What do you think, Loretta?
What I was gonna say is I often take my colleagues or somebody around to the places. And I am also partially disabled. And I'm more than willing to take you, Miss Wellington, and you, Mr. Watson, and anybody in my car, no charge, around to as many as we can get to. And that way
Okay.
you don't have to get out of the car to see a chunk of it. It's not going to be as, as if you were walking some of it, but you would get to see a lot.
It makes sense.
Parts
The
of
reason why I asked,
Woodland Cemetery would be accessible
Yes,
if you're in a wheelchair. So
yes.
okay. And where is that one located exactly?
Which on Woodland?
Yes.
It's on Magnolia Avenue.
Okay.
Do you know where Mechanicsville Turnpike is?
I do.
Okay, you go up Mechanicsville Turnpike until just over the overpass for 64, and you'll
Uh-huh.
see a left-hand turn. There's a McDonald's there on that left side. You
Uh-huh.
turn in there, and then truthfully, you probably need somebody like me to go with you because it's on the left, on the right, but it's not obvious necessarily from the road.
Okay.
and,
You
and they're
know,
not Woodland's not open all the time. So they do have
Yeah.
days that they're open.
because
And
they
you
actually
can
have
reach
a
out.
gate.
I was going to say, feel free to email us, Khalil, and we could give you written instructions. I think sometimes the driving directions that are created through the Google Maps and such are not always the best.
No.
So feel free to reach out to us.
That makes sense. And one last question. Can you all put your email in the chat?
Mm-hmm.
And then also I will send it in a follow-up email, their contact information, just so you have it both
Okay.
places.
Sounds
Okay.
good. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much. Thanks, Loretta. Thanks, Bernard.
You're
Bye,
welcome.
Judy.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.